Okay, folks, welcome back. I'd like to talk to you today about this game that I really enjoy playing called Kingsburg. I'm going to talk about the base game, but I'm also going to throw in there a little bit of talk about the expansion to Forge a Realm that you can also pick up right now. It doesn't come with the base game, but you can still pick it up. And I think it's one of those expansions that you probably would do well to go ahead and go out and purchase it right off the bat. Maybe play a couple base games first, but then the expansion only helps the game enrich itself. So here we go, Kingsburg, and then after that, it's expansion to Forge a Realm. All right, so folks, as we begin opening the box here for Kingsburg, you'll see that it comes with your, of course, your token rulebook, and it is well displayed, kind of a wall of text, but there are some pretty good examples of how everything works and explanations of what each of the advisors do and so forth and so on. So that's par for the course. You also get 5 player colors that are yellow, black, blue, red, and green. Then you also get a bag of little wooden cubes that stand for wood, gold, and ore, that are going to be resources that you use throughout the game. You get the enemies decks, 1 deck for each of the 5 years of each game, of each round of the game, and then you're also going to get extra dice that you might be able to be awarded, and some other various pieces that you'll use throughout the game in just a few that I'll explain to you in a few moments. So you get all that good stuff, and then you also get your player boards. Basically, the way this works is you can build from left to right, and in order to build the chapel, you have to first build the statue, so forth and so on, and each row is the specific thing. You can build anything in the first column to begin the game, and you can always build anything in the first column, but in order to build something in the second, third, or fourth columns consecutively, you have to build the preceding column first. So you have to build a statue before you build a chapel, you have to build a chapel before you build a church, and so forth and so on for all of the different rows. Game board, that comes with all of the different advisors, and the scoring track is around the outside here, as you can see. Alright, so let's take a look at the game. Okay, here I have a 2-player game of Kingsburg set up. Generally speaking, I would normally not play it with 2-player. I would think 4 is a sweet spot for this, maybe 3, and then 5 is going to make the game go a little bit longer. So I think 4 is a sweet spot for Kingsburg. Generally speaking, the different areas of the board here, you have the year track right here, which tracks the different seasons that we're going through, with spring, summer, autumn, and winter. This is the enemy attack, enemy's attack deck, and basically to set up before the game, you would take each of these decks. There's a 1 deck, a 2 deck, a 3 deck, a 4 deck, and a 5 deck, and they each have 5 cards in them. So that right off the bat tells you that there's a good bit of replayability when it comes to Kingsburg. But basically the anatomy of the card is, this is the year in which this attack is going to happen. The strength of the attack is going to be anywhere from a 2 to a 4. So the most it's going to be is a 4, the least it's going to be is a 2, and then if you turn the card over, it'll tell you what kind of attack happens. In the red, if you do not meet or exceed the power of the attack, these are bad things that will happen to you. If you exceed the number of the number of the attack, then this is the reward that you will get. If you equal the number, you don't get either of these, which can be a good thing, because as you get into the 5th year, some of these things are really, really bad. So that's the effect. Each year, it's going to happen. The game's going to happen in 5 different years. So at each winter, an attack will occur. The general point of the game is to simply get the most points. The points can be rendered in a number of different ways. Some of the rewards of the battles, if you defeat the enemy that's attacking, will give you points. Some of the advisors that you will be petitioning for their help will give you points. Some of the buildings that you build throughout the course of the game will give you points. So the point of the game is to have the most victory points at the end. But how you get there is what makes this fun. At the beginning of the game in the first year, the first thing that you go through is the king's favor. Basically, whoever has the least number of houses gets an extra die that they can roll during their turn, which will give them, hopefully, a better ability to influence the advisors that are in the king's court. At the beginning of the game, since we all have equally fewest houses, since we have none, we all get to choose one resource of our choice. And that's only in the first round of the game. So let's see, I'll choose gold, and we'll say that yellow chooses ore. I don't know. We'll see. All right, so then we go into the first productive year. All right, first productive year, then we take our dice and we roll them. Now, I do want to say right now, these dice are not, they don't come with the base game. These are an expansion kind of thing. You do not need to get it. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't like these because they say that the numbers are very difficult to read, and especially for the video, that might be very true. But the game basically comes, I don't have my original dice anymore. They come with regular wooden six-sided dice that have pips on them. They're very easy to read. I just like these because they look fancier. Shoot me. Anyway, so in the productive year, we both roll our dice. Okay, and then we add our dice together. So I have a 6, 4, and a 5 here, which makes 15. Then I have a, wow, imagine that. 6, 4, and a 5 over here, which also equals 15. And normally speaking, let's just say that we did this. 6, 4, and a 1 makes that 11. So what we would do here, we would determine, first of all, who gets first player. The person who rolled the lowest gets to go first. And if there is a tie, then it stays the same as it was the last round. Yellow is able to place their dice first. Now, a person can place all or one of their dice. It doesn't matter. It just matters what advisor you're trying to influence. Now, I have 11 as yellow. So the highest I could go is right here, which this advisor will give me 1 stone and 1 gold, or 1 stone and 1 wood. So if I wanted to, I could place all of my dice there, meaning that I would be able to influence that advisor. But maybe I don't want to influence him. I want to influence something else. So I could go here, influence the Joker, and that would get me a victory point. Or I could go here and with 10, and that would get me 2 soldiers and the ability to see what enemy is going to be attacking us in the winter, so that I can start planning towards that. So I can do either or. I'm going to make sure I get that 1 first of all. Okay, so I place my 1. Now the green player can do the same thing. He can influence the 5, which will give him a military power, or he could influence the 10, which would give him 2 military power and the ability to look at this. Or if he wanted to, he could come up here and influence up here 15 and get a gold, a wood, and a stone. All right, so I think since I see that yellow has a 6 and a 4 over here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I take that away from him so that he can't get that. That is a good position. It's good to know what's coming up. Plus, it gives you 2 military power towards that battle at the end of the year. So now it goes back to the green's turn. Well, I'm sorry, it goes back to yellow's turn. Green took the 10, so I can't use those together anymore. So I can either use the 4 or the 6. Now the 6, since I already have a stone here, would allow me to turn that stone in for a gold and a wood. That's not a bad idea. So we'll go ahead and leave him there. Then that brings out this. Green only has a 5 left, so he'll push here. And then 4 only has a 4 left, and that pushes there. All right, and then in number order of the advisors, we go and resolve each one. So yellow would get a victory point. Then yellow would get either a gold or a wood. And we're going to go ahead and get a wood. Then green is able to get 1 military power up here. Then yellow can turn in, now that yellow has 2 different, I can turn in for a gold and a wood, or I can turn in for a gold and a stone. So I look here, and you know what? I think I want that guard tower. So I'm going to turn my wood in for a stone and a gold. 10. Green gets 2 more military power and can also look at what's coming next. Of course, we already looked at it. At this point, we come to the end of a productive year, and we're able to take the resources that we have and build buildings. Let's see, is there anything that I can build with just 1 gold? No, there isn't, so I'm stuck. I'm not building anything this turn. However, yellow here can build a guard tower. So it takes 1 stone and 1 gold, takes one of its markers and places it on the guard tower. Now the guard tower says that it gives 1 victory point, and it's worth +1 in battle. So we get 1 victory point for the guard tower, and then later on, the +1 in battle is not tallied right now. It's tallied the last thing during the battle in the winter. At this point, we move to the king's favor. Whoever has the most buildings gets 1 victory point. Well, I don't have any buildings here in green, but yellow does have a building, so yellow gets a victory point. Then we go to the next productive year. So I roll my dice. Yellow rolls theirs. Green has a 6, 2, and a 1. Yellow has a 4, 3, and 1. All right. So that's 7, 8 for yellow and 9 for green. So since yellow rolled the least, they stay in first place, and green continues in second place. So green is able to place their first thing first. So we're going to get one of our choice. We're going to influence number 7 there. Green is going to go with 8. Yellow will go with 1. And since green only has 1 left, they cannot go anywhere else. So then we resolve the advisors in order. 1 gets a victory point, yellow gets a victory point, and then yellow gets a resource of their choice plus this token, and I'll explain what that token does in just a moment. We're going to get a wood. These tokens right here have a 2 on them. Basically what that does is it allows you to influence an advisor to higher than what you have. So let's say green had one of these on this last turn when we both had 1s left and yellow took the 1. I could have taken this token, had I hypothetically had it, place it with my 1 to influence the 3 position. So these do come in handy from time to time. Now we go back into a productive year. At the end of the productive season, again, I got hosed there a little bit and wasn't able to get any buildings. So I'm not able to build here, but yellow is going to use its 1 wood to build a barricade. Now a barricade doesn't give any points, doesn't even give any modifiers to battle unless you're fighting goblins, and then it becomes a +1. So that might help a little bit later. Then we come to the king's envoy phase. Whoever has the least number of houses gets the king's envoy. Now the king's envoy can be used in 2 different ways. It can either be used to influence an advisor that has already been influenced by somebody else, or it can be used to build a second building at the end of a productive year. Normally you can only build 1 building during a productive year, but with the King's Envoy, you can build 2, provided you have the resources. All right, with that, we go to the autumn productive season. We roll our dice. And yellow has a 4, 2, and 1, so that's 7. And green has a 5, 5, and a 2, which is 12. So yellow stays the first person and green goes second. So what yellow is going to do, they have 6, 7. We're going to go ahead and use, only one of these can be used every time you place. So you place that there, and that becomes a 9, and we're going to influence her. Now, a 12, now that's pretty good because it's going to get us her, which gives us 2 resources of our choice plus one of these guys here. So everybody's done placing. We go in order. The 9 comes off first, and a gold and a wood. And then green comes off and get 2 of my choice plus a token. And I think I'm going to take a gold and a wood. And then we come to the end of the productive year. Up here, yellow is going to build an N. So it gives in 1 wood and 1 gold. Places one of its marker on the N. Now the N doesn't give any victory points, but at the end of each summer, you get to receive one of these for free. It's to simulate people staying in your inn, giving you money, more resources that way. All right. Now, normally, like I said before, you can only build 1 building per turn, per productive year. But now that I have the King's Envoy, I can use the King's Envoy to build a second building, and I'm going to do that this turn. First of all, I'm going to use my 2 gold to build a statue, which gives me 3 victory points. And then at the beginning of each productive season, if I roll the same number on all 3 of my dice, I can re-roll 1 of them. And then I'm going to use my King's Envoy to use my wood and build a barricade down here. So that goes back on the King's Envoy space. And now I've built 2 buildings there. At that point, we go to recruitment phase is what it's called, sorry, where you can purchase soldiers for the battle that it's about to happen. And you can use 2 resources to purchase 1 soldier. Now, when you have the barracks later on, you only have to use 1 good to purchase a soldier. But for right now, we both have to use 2. Neither of us have 2 goods, so we can't purchase any additional soldiers here. So we come to the winter phase, and at that point, we tally how much we have in military strength. Green has 3, and yellow has none. But then what happens is the king sends reinforcements. So a die is rolled, and the king sends 2 military. So that means green gets 2, yellow gets 2. Then we flip over, and the orcs attack with a power of 3. Then we look at any additional bonuses that happen. So the yellow player here has +1 in battle, and +0 in battle. That becomes +1 if there's goblins. They aren't goblins, so that doesn't count. But this +1 for the guard tower does count. So yellow receives 3 military altogether. Green doesn't have any bonuses except for the barricade bonus if we were attacking goblins, but we aren't, so they don't have any bonuses, so they just stay at 5. So we check our totals. The total is 3 that we have to beat. Yellow equaled to 3, so they don't lose anything here, but they don't gain anything either. They just avoid the bad repercussions. Green, however, exceeded 3, so not only do they not have to do this, they get a gold. And then in addition to that, because green had the highest military total in the battle, they also get a victory point for their heroic and brave battling. The year token would move to the second year. This would be discarded. Military strength would go back to 0 for the next year. And then King's favor happens again. Now, we both had the same number of houses last turn. This time we don't. I only have 2. Yellow has 3. So that means I get an extra die to roll during my productive year. The next productive year begins, or productive season begins, and play continues that way until the 5th year. Just briefly before we talk about the expansion, I'd like to just go over some of the things, some of the advisors that I did not talk about in the explanation, just so that you can understand basically how the board reads. Whenever there is a resource picture, that's the resource that you get and how many of that resource that you get. Here, if there is a slash in between, it means you get that or that. So a gold or a wood if you influence number 4 here. Up here on the 14, if you lose a victory point, you can choose 3 resources of your choice. And then up here in the beginning, the queen, arguably probably the best spot on the board is you can choose 2 resources of your choice. You get 3 victory points, and you get to look at who is attacking at the end of the year. So arguably probably one of the best spots on the board to influence. Of course, you got to have 17 in order to do that. The king gives you 1 of each of the resources, and he also gives you a military soldier as well. So again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory past that, but I just wanted to explain those so that you could get the full effect. Now let's talk about To Forge a Realm. First thing that To Forge a Realm does is it replaces the smaller player boards with larger player boards. It adds 2 rows to the player boards, giving more diversity and different paths to victory, so to speak. But even on top of that, they also give these row replacements, A through G, and there are 2 of each. Basically what would happen is you would turn these over face down at the beginning of the game. Everyone would pick 2, and then they have the opportunity to use those. They don't have to. If you just want to stay and use these, that's fine. But let's say that I picked these 2, and I turn them over. So these 2 rows are either going to replace the B row or the D row. Now I can use both of them if I want to, or I can use only one, or I can use none of them. It doesn't matter. It's my choice. So let's say that, yeah, I want to replace row B. All right, so now that's another path to victory that I could use. And I don't want to use that. Why wouldn't I? Well, if you look, the lookout tower, you're going to get less victory points, and I think the special abilities that these buildings give you are better during the game anyway. So I choose not to use this one, and I put it back in the box. So that's the second thing or module that comes in the expansion to Forge a Realm. Then, on top of that, you have what are called Destiny cards. And Destiny cards look like this on one side, and they are basically just text on the other. Basically, you would give these guys a shuffle, and at the beginning of every year, you would turn it over, and that is a special rule that is added to that year of the game. For example, in this specific example, it says, in every productive season, players not owning the crane or the carpenter pay 1 gold less when building in columns 3 and 4. Players owning the crane or the carpenter pay 1 gold less of their choice when building columns in 1 and 2. Okay, so if you don't own the crane or the carpenter, you can pay 1 gold less in these columns. But if you do own it, you can pay 1 gold less in these columns. And that's a special rule for that 1 year. Then in the beginning of the next year, another card would be drawn. So again, this just kind of mixes up play a little bit, but not too much to where it becomes too convoluted. Another module that comes with To Forge a Realm are these governor cards. And governor cards are used this way at the beginning of the game. These are shuffled. 3 are dealt to each player. The player can take and look at what he has available to him. He chooses one and returns the other 2 to the game box. And then each player simultaneously reveals which governor they chose, and that is a special power that that player has available to them for the rest of the game. A number of different abilities that come from this. First of all, you have the Trickster. You can use a 2 token as if it were a +1 or +3 tokens. All right, so you can use the Trickster can use those tokens not just as +2s, but also +1s or +3s. So it gives you a greater diversity of things, of advisors that you can influence. The Sorcerer, at the start of year 3, build for free up to 3 buildings in the leftmost column. You do not get the corresponding victory points. And the leftmost column is over here, and you can always build those. So it gives you the ability to build those without having to pay for it, but you don't get the victory points that are associated with it. So that would be a good thing to do. If you've already built all of the victory point ones, you can just build the other ones now. Priest has a lot of text, so does the Heiress. The Damsel, at the beginning of each year, receive 1 +2 token. You can use several +2 in the same season, but not more than 1 to influence a single advisor. So that's a special ability. The General, he just always gets +1 in battle. Mercenary, he always gets +2 in battle. At the end of the winter battle, if you win, you do not get the rewards listed on the enemy card, but you can still get the extra victory point for winning with the highest combat value. So the +2 doesn't give you any of the bonuses for winning, but it does still allow you to get the victory point at the end. So there's a lot of different governors that you can use. Again, just another way to spice up the game. And then the final module that comes into Forge a Realm are these military reinforcement tokens that are given to each player in their player color. Basically, this gives you a 0, 2 1s, a 2, a 3, and a 4. And these replace one of the negative things that were said about the game was the chaos of the King's reinforcements. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was not very good at all. And so now this is a module that allows people that say that to use these instead. Basically, each token can be used once per game. Once it's used, it goes back in the box and it cannot be used again. So it gives you the opportunity over the course of five attacks to use one of these tokens. So it gives you a little bit more strategy, I guess you could say. All right, so that is Kingsburg and its expansion to Forge a Realm. And hopefully you can see why I enjoy this game so much. I'm a sucker, first of all, for dice rolling, and I'm a sucker also for worker placement. So when you have dice acting as workers and then you place those dice on the board, that's almost a slam dunk for me. So the tension that's created between is somebody else going to take my spot before I can get to it, or something to that effect, that is one of the things that makes this game something that I want to come back to playing. It's very engaging. It is a very fun game to play because normally, more often than not, unless you're playing with really mean people, you can finagle something out of your turn. There's very few times, at least in my experience, where I have been able to do nothing in the course of a turn. Again, it really depends on the kind of people you're playing with, but generally there's something that you can do, and generally it's something that, while it might not help you out a lot in the short run, it will help you in the long run. Some things to think about whenever you can look ahead. to see who is attacking and how strong they are. You should take that opportunity. Do not neglect military strength, because the negative things that can happen if you don't defeat the enemy are really bad. Some of them you can they can make you lose buildings, make you lose resources, make you lose victory points. So you really want to stay away from being defeated by the armies attacking hordes, if at all possible. Another thing is, I know it sounds mean, but allowing the same person to get the number 1, the victory point every turn, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it really can be, because it gives them a bumper to your victory point total that it's going to be hard to get back. It can be strategic to have the fewest number of houses coming into the beginning of the next year, so that you can get that extra die to roll during the productive season. It can be advantageous to have the fewest number of houses coming into the King's Envoy, so that you get that token that can be used in those 2 different ways that I explained. So again, there's a little bit of strategy there, where it looks like you're hurting yourself to begin with, but in the end it's going to pay off. So keep that in mind as well. I really enjoy this game. It gets 2 full thumbs up from me. I'm usually always willing to play this game if it hits the table, with the caveat being that I'm already in something else. I'm not going to abandon one game to come play Kingsburg, but you get the idea. And then to Forge a Realm, it's probably one of the best expansions that has been created for a game, because it adds a number of different ways that you can affect the base game without changing the complexity of it that much. Plus, it's modular. You don't have to use all of them. You can pick and choose what you like and what you don't like. For example, the military reinforcement tokens. I usually don't use those, mainly because I like rolling the dice. I like that chaotic factor. That's, are we going to make it or are we not going to make it? Did the king really help us out, or did he kind of chintz out on us and not send us enough reinforcements? I like that feeling in that part of the game, so I usually don't use that. But it is a good module for those that usually like to have a little bit more tactical or strategical feel to their games. The larger player boards, I don't ever use the smaller player boards anymore. However, I do on occasion have been known not to use the rows, the extra rows, and replacing the rows that are on the player board. That takes a little bit more, I guess you could say, maturity within the game. In other words, you've played the game a lot more. It's not your first time, that type of thing, because you could make a poor decision. You could replace a good row with a not as good row. If you don't know what you're doing. So the modular point of this game is a great idea. I like some better than others, but they're all good. So this expansion gets 2 thumbs up from me as well. So I hope you enjoyed that talk through Kingsburg and its expansion to Forge a Realm. See you on the flip side, folks.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.